The ship door opened with a loud hiss. Two guards grabbed the human by his arms. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Everyone knew what this meant. Exile. The man's name was Jaren. A mechanic, smart, quiet, and strong. But the alien? Council claimed he broke their sacred rule. They said he touched forbidden tech, but deep down, everyone knew the truth. He had seen something he wasn't supposed to. The guards threw him out into the wild planet below. No weapons, no food, not even a communicator. Only the clothes on his back. The world he landed on was called Karnax 4, a dark, dangerous planet full of creatures. None had ever survived more than a week there as the shuttle flew away. Jaren looked up at the shrinking light. His lips didn't curse. He didn't cry. He just whispered, "Then I'll live anyway." The air was thick and wet. The trees were huge and twisted. He walked for hours, the ground soft and full of strange holes. At night, the sounds began, screeches, growls. Heavy breathing, not his. Something was watching him. He found a small cave near a cliff. It was half covered in vines and rocks. He pushed through and went inside. It was dark, cold, but dry. He thought it was empty. He was wrong. A deep, slow breath echoed in the cave. Then another, heavier, louder. Jaren froze. From the shadows, something massive shifted. He could only see two red eyes glowing in the dark. He stepped back, hands raised, but the creature didn't attack. It just stared at him. Its body was huge, covered in metal and scars. Its arms were too long, its head too low, a mix of animal and machine. It looked like it had been built, then broken, left to rot. Like him, Jaren stayed still, his heart racing. The creature sniffed the air, growled softly. Then it did something that shook him to the core. It whispered, in broken human words, "Why, you here?" Jaren blinked. The thing could talk. "I was thrown here," Jaren said slowly. "I didn't want to come." The creature grunted, turning its head slightly. "Same? Me." Jaren stepped forward a little. "Who are you?" he asked. The beast didn't answer. Instead, it looked at a pile of rocks near the wall. Bones were there, some old, some fresh. The message was clear. This cave had rules. Jaren nodded. "I'll stay on my side." He sat on the floor, cold and shaking, but alive. The creature returned to its spot in the dark. Silence returned, only the sound of wind outside and slow breathing inside. Hours passed. Jaren didn't sleep. He listened to every sound. He knew the jungle outside wanted him dead, but the real danger was in the cave with him. But strangely, it didn't come closer. It didn't attack. It just watched him. At dawn, he tore part of his shirt to make a trap. He caught a small, lizard-like animal, cooked it over a small fire using his boots' heating core. He didn't eat it all. He placed half near the shadows and whispered, "For you." The creature crawled forward slowly, sniffed the food, then took it gently with metal claws. A low grunt of approval came from its chest. Jaren smiled a little. Maybe he wasn't alone in this exile after all, but he knew something else now. Something the council had never said. This monster. It wasn't native to the planet. It was created. Like a weapon, and someone had thrown it away too. He lay back on the cold ground, eyes on the red glow, watching him from the dark. This was not the end. This was just the start of something much bigger. They had left him to die, but instead, they had given him a monster, and maybe, just maybe, that monster would become his only friend. Jaren woke to the sound of deep breathing. It wasn't his. The cave was still dark, but something had changed. The creature was closer now. It sat at the edge of the fire's remains, watching him, silently. Jaren didn't move too fast. He sat up slowly, hands open, showing no threat. The creature tilted its head. Its eyes weren't just red. They were tired, old, and full of pain, Jaren whispered, "Do you remember who made you?" The beast growled low. "Bad people," it said, voice rough like stones grinding, "made me fight, kill, then left me here." Jaren nodded slowly. "I was left too. They thought we wouldn't survive." The creature's jaw moved side to side. Thinking, then it spoke a name, broken and strange. "Gravik," it said, tapping its chest. It wasn't a word, it was a name. Jaren smiled slightly. "Gravik, that's your name." The beast gave a slow nod. Jaren pointed to himself. "Jaren." Gravik repeated it, softer than expected. "Jaren." From that moment, something changed. They didn't trust each other, not yet. But they understood each other. Two outcasts, thrown away, forgotten. Over the next few days, Jaren stayed in the cave. He set small traps, brought food back. Every time, he shared it with Gravik. The creature never took more than half. Sometimes, it even left strange meat Jaren couldn't recognize its own hunt. They didn't talk much, but when they did, Jaren learned pieces of Gravik's story. He had been made in a secret lab, far from here, a mix of alien species and war tech. He was a living weapon. A test subject, but one day he refused to obey. He broke free, destroyed part of the lab. And the scientists dumped him on Karnax 4, thinking he would die alone. But like Jaren, he survived. He learned the forest, the shadows, and the sky. He remembered pain, betrayal, and fire. Jaren asked once, "Why didn't you kill me when I entered the cave?" Gravik didn't answer for a long time. Then he finally whispered, "Eyes, same as mine." Jaren sat in silence after that, because deep down, he knew exactly what Gravik meant. Eyes that had seen betrayal, eyes that had nothing left to lose. One night, Gravik showed Jaren something, a hidden tunnel behind the cave leading deep underground. At the end of a broken lab, screens shattered, metal twisted. Strange machines frozen in time. Jaren walked carefully, touching burnt wires and melted armor pieces. "This is where you came from?" he asked. Gravik gave a slow nod. Jaren knelt beside a cracked display. The nameplate said Project GVK. Below it, alien writing glowed faintly. Jaren could only read part of it. Terminate, if disobedient. He turned to Gravik. "They made you? And planned to kill you?" Gravik looked down. "I was fool." He growled. "Not?" Person Jaren stood and clenched his fist. "Not anymore," he said, voice cold and calm. "You're not a tool. You're Gravik." That night, Jaren sat outside the cave, looking at the stars. The same stars that watched him fall from the ship. He remembered the faces of those who cast him out. He had been quiet before, not a fighter, but now he had reason to fight, not for revenge, but for respect. Inside the cave, Gravik stared at the fire. He too remembered the lab, the screams, the wires in his skin. He looked at his own clawed hand and slowly closed it into a fist. Maybe this human was different. Maybe he wasn't just another master. The jungle roared in the distance, but the cave remained warm, silent, and safe. In the morning, Jaren stood tall and looked at Gravik. "I'm going back," he said. Gravik tilted his head, confused. "Back? Where?" "To them," Jaren replied. "To the people who left us. I won't hide forever." Gravik stepped closer. "Alone?" Jaren shook his head. "No," he said firmly, "not anymore." Gravik gave a deep, rumbling sound, something close to a laugh, then nodded. Two beings, once abandoned, now stood side by side. Man and monster, both broken, both betrayed, and both ready to return. Jaren followed Gravik through the jungle. Not as a master, not as a leader, just side by side. The creature moved fast, but quiet. Even with metal parts in his legs, he didn't make a sound. Jaren tried to keep up, brushing vines and ducking low branches. There was something in Gravik's steps. A purpose, like he remembered something important. They reached an open valley. Hidden deep inside the planet, old metal towers rose from the ground, covered in moss and vines, broken. Drones and glass panels lay everywhere. Is this another lab? Jaren asked. Gravik growled. Low and sharp, not lab. Battlefield. Jaren stepped forward, boots crunching glass underfoot. He saw blast marks, cracked weapons, and melted armor. Gravik walked to a rusted piece of armor his own size. It looked like a suit once worn on his back. Jaren knelt. Beside it, this was yours, he whispered. Gravik didn't move, just stared. Then he touched the chest plate, and something inside lit up barely. But enough, a small blue light blinked 3 times. And then a voice spoke. Unit GVK. Bond status failed. Terminated. Archive sealed. Jaren stood up, shocked. That voice. It thinks you're dead. Gravik nodded slowly. System shut down. Long time ago, he turned to Jaren. Need fix? To open memory. Memory. Jaren asked. Gravik pointed to his own head. Proof. Of what they did. Of who I was. Looked around at the broken tech. He saw half a console still glowing. He rushed to it, wiped off the dirt, and tapped a few buttons. Most didn't work. But some screens flickered on. Images showed Gravik in chains. Standing among other creatures, they were all different, some with wings. Others with sharp tails. All half machine, half flesh. Jaren's heart sank. They made an army, he whispered. An army of monsters. Gravik looked down at his hands. Only I survived. Jaren stood in silence. Then he did something strange. He placed his hand on Gravik's shoulder. The metal felt cold, but Gravik didn't pull away. You're not a monster, Jaren said softly. You're alive. You made your own choice. That night, they stayed in the battlefield ruins. Jaren found an old tool pack and fixed Gravik's damaged shoulder joint. Sparks flew, but Gravik didn't flinch. Instead, he watched Jaren work carefully. You fix me, he said with surprise. I fix machines, Jaren replied with a smile. Turns out, I fix friends too. When the stars came out, Gravik opened one more panel from his back. Inside was a small orb, glowing faintly, hidden for years. He placed it in Jaren's hand. This, my heart, my real memory. Only open when safe. Jaren held the orb carefully. Then let's find a way to open it. But before he could, say more. The jungle trembled. A deep humming sound echoed through the trees. Something was coming. Something heavy. Gravik stood and growled. Hunters. Jaren looked up at the dark sky. Red lights blinked through the clouds. A ship, small and fast, heading straight toward them. Gravik grabbed Jaren and dragged him into the shadows. They return, he said, voice low, to make sure. I am dead. The ship landed nearby. 3 armored aliens stepped out, soldiers, faces hidden by masks. One carried a strange weapon, glowing blue. They walked straight toward the ruins. Toward the last signal Gravik had triggered, Jaren whispered. What do we do? Gravik didn't answer. Instead, he stood, towering above Jaren. His red eyes burned bright. Time to show what monster really is. Then, with a roar that shook the valley, Gravik charged. The battle had begun. And Jaren wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was part of something greater. He was part of the monster bond. The air exploded. With light blaster shots filled the sky. Gravik crashed into the soldiers like a falling star. Jaren ducked behind a broken console, heart pounding. He had seen machines fight, but never like this. This wasn't just survival. This was rage. Controlled and burning hot, Gravik grabbed the first soldier and slammed him into a wall. The armor cracked like dry bone. The second raised a plasma rifle, but Gravik's claws were faster. He sliced through it with a metallic scream. The third ran back to the ship to call for help, but Jaren had already moved. He threw a broken power cell near the ship's engine and yelled, "Gravik, now!" Gravik turned and fired a beam from his chest. The ship burst into flames. The blast pushed Jaren backward. He hit the ground hard but rolled onto his feet. The jungle burned around them, and the last soldier disappeared into smoke. Gravik limped back, one arm shaking, but he was still standing. Jaren ran to his side. "You're hit." "Not deep," Gravik said. Though sparks leaked from his side, Jaren helped him back into the ruins. The fire around them grew louder, but Jaren found what he was looking for. The orb from Gravik's memory was glowing stronger now. Heat. Or danger had woken it. He placed it into a socket inside Gravik's chest. The orb lit up, and a soft voice played from inside Gravik's body. Memory core activated. Unit GVK. Status alive. Bond recognized. Human identified. A light beam projected from Gravik's chest, showing floating images. Jaren saw Gravik's early life chains, surgeries, battles, then rebellion, escape, and exile. But then came something else. The truth Gravik hadn't escaped by chance. He was helped by a human. "Wait," Jaren said, eyes wide. "That's my father." The image was blurry, but Jaren recognized the uniform. His father had gone missing on a secret mission years ago. No one ever told him what happened. Gravik spoke softly. "He saved me. Freed me," said. One day his son would understand. He looked down at Jaren. "Now, I see." Jaren's knees felt weak. He sat down beside Gravik and stared at the burning forest. His father had freed Gravik. Now he had brought him back. Jaren clenched his fists. "I won't let them bury this," he whispered. "They threw us both away. But we'll return and tell everyone." Gravik tilted his head. "Return? To them?" "Yes." Jaren nodded. "To the colony. To the council. We'll show them the truth. But they will kill us." Jaren stood, firelight dancing across his face. "Not if we plan it right." He spent the next 2 days repairing Gravik's injuries, using scrap from the battlefield. He rebuilt part of Gravik's armor, reinforced his leg, added power to his damaged shoulder. He also found a hidden distress beacon in the wrecked soldier's gear. It was cracked, but not useless. Jaren worked all night, tweaking the signal to sound like a survivor call. A weak cry for rescue from a helpless, exiled human. Gravik watched silently. "You set trap," he said finally. Jaren nodded. "They'll send a team, thinking I'm dying." He looked up at Gravik, "and they'll come ready to kill. That's why we'll be ready too." Gravik stood tall. Together. 3 days later, the beacon activated. The signal reached the sky. Jaren and Gravik waited in silence. The jungle had gone quiet, as if even the trees feared what was coming. At nightfall, the sky split with a sharp line of silver. A small scout ship flew low, fast, and landed right where Jaren predicted. The ramp opened, and 6 armored soldiers stepped out. Jaren stood in plain sight, hands raised, acting weak. One soldier barked, "You're the Exile. Where's the creature?" Jaren looked down, pretending to shake. "Gone. I think he left me behind." The leader laughed cruelly. "Guess the monster didn't like pets." That's when the ground shook, trees snapped, and the air filled with thunder. Gravik burst from the trees, fully repaired, glowing with energy. The soldiers raised weapons, but they were too slow. Jaren dove behind a rock as the battle began. He watched Gravik move like a shadow, silent, deadly, and full of fury. But this time, Jaren didn't just watch. He aimed a salvaged blaster and fired at the leader's weapon. The explosion knocked the soldier back one by one. The enemy fell. This time, it wasn't just revenge. It was the start of war. the colony ship named Pillar of Order hovered above the jungle moon. It was cold, silent, and clean. Inside the ship, high-ranking alien officers studied data screens. They expected one report: human exile terminated. But instead, they've got something terrifying. The screen flickered red. Scout team. Signal lost, visual feed interrupted, unidentified energy signature detected. The commander's hand trembled. He turned to the others, voice sharp. Play last. Recorded footage. The image showed the jungle fire. Then a shape, huge, armored, glowing red eyes. Not just attacking, but moving with purpose. Fighting beside a human, protecting him. One officer gasped. "That's Project GVK." Another muttered. But he was destroyed. "We saw the logs." "No," the commander whispered. "He survived." "And the exile?" "Bonded with him." The room went quiet. Fear spread fast. Not just fear of a beast, but of what it represented. The perfect weapon had chosen a human dot back on the jungle moon. Jaren stood near the burned remains of the enemy ship. Smoke rose into the sky like a message. He looked up, breathing heavy but calm. "They'll come again," he said. Gravik stood beside him, silent, watching the flames. "They scared now," he growled softly. "They hide behind walls." Jaren turned to Gravik. "Good. Let them be scared." They scavenged what they could from the ship weapons. Power, cores, supplies. Jaren repaired a small escape pod, enough to leave the moon. And send a warning. He activated the pod's long-range comms, recorded a message. This one was different. It was a challenge. "This is Jaren. This is Jaren the exile you left to die." He said into the camera, "I survived. Thanks." To the one you called a monster, the camera panned to Gravik, standing tall behind him. "We remember everything. And we are coming." He sent the message to 3 colonies, places that had stayed silent when he was thrown away. Now, they would know the truth. Across the stars, panic spread. People watched the video again and again. A human and a beast together, alive, unstoppable. They called them names. The Exile and the Engine of Death. The human flame, the red bond stories twisted and grew. Some said the human had tamed death itself. Others said he controlled a god of war. But one thing was certain, fear had begun to spread. The council met in secret, their faces pale, their voices low. One whispered, "What if others try to bond with monsters?" Another said, "What if Gravik shares his knowledge?" The commander slammed a table. "Then we must destroy them, quickly, before this story spreads further." Back on the moon, Jaren and Gravik walked to the hill where the stars could be seen. Gravik carried parts of the old lab's core on his back. Jaren pointed up. "We'll build a new ship, something fast, something strong." Gravik looked at him and asked, "Why go back?" Jaren didn't smile, didn't speak for a moment. Then he said quietly, "Because somewhere out there, others like you are suffering, and people like me are being thrown away." Gravik understood. He reached down, touched the soil, and growled, "No more cages. No more chains." That night, they built a small beacon, not to call for help, but to call for the broken. Jaren activated it, and the signal spread across satellites, across dark networks. One message repeated again and again. "We were thrown away, but we are not gone. We are rising." In a dark room on a distant planet, a young alien girl watched the message. She hid her metal claws beneath gloves, afraid of being called a freak. But when she saw Gravik's image on the screen alive, proud, she pulled off her gloves and whispered, "I'm not a monster either." In another world, a man with burn marks on half his face grinned. He turned to a hidden chamber where his own broken armor lay. "It's time," he said softly, "to come back." Across the stars, the forgotten began to rise, and at the center, Of it all was one human and one monster. No longer just survivors, they were symbols. They were fear, they were hope. The sky above Colony Arcanus 9 shimmered with golden shields. Guards stood at every gate, hands gripping weapons. The people inside the walls felt safe. Safe from monsters, safe from exiles, safe from truth. But safety was a lie, and that lie was about to break. The city was quiet that morning, until a sound echoed from the clouds deep, loud, unnatural. Everyone looked up. A small black ship, strange, sharp, and made of scrap metal, descended fast. No known symbol on it, no warning. No request for landing. Panic rose in the streets, but it was too late. The ship landed in the central square. The doors opened, steam hissing out, and from the mist walked two figures, one tall, dark-haired human in a simple jacket, and beside him, a monster made of muscle, steel, and red glowing eyes. Jaren and Gravik had arrived. The guards aimed weapons immediately. "Stay back," one shouted. "This is restricted." But Gravik stepped forward. With one roar, he bent the barrel of the nearest weapon with his hand. No gun fired after that. Jaren walked calmly to the center of the square. Civilians gathered behind doors. Peeking through windows, they had heard rumors. But now they saw the truth. "I was one of you." Jaren spoke, voice calm but loud. "I worked in your systems, fixed your ships, obeyed your rules." He raised a small device and played a projection. It showed the lab, the cages, the pain. Gravik suffered. It showed Jaren's exile, the ship throwing him away like trash. "This is what your leaders hid from you," he said. "They throw away those who ask questions. They fear the truth." Someone in the crowd shouted, "That's Gravik. He was a weapon." Jaren turned slowly. "Yes. And now he's a protector." He looked at Gravik, who stood silently but proud. "This creature saved me, protected me, cared for me. More than your council ever did." The council building doors opened with a hiss. Guards stepped out, followed by the alien leader who once signed Jaren's exile. Councillor Valextal, silver-skinned, draped in gold. He smiled thinly. "So you return, Jaren," he said coldly, "with your pet." Gravik growled, but Jaren raised a hand. "No anger," he said softly to his friend. "Let the people hear." Jaren stepped closer. "I came not for revenge, Valex. I came for justice." Valex scoffed. "You have no power here." Jaren smiled and pulled a small crystal chip from his pocket. "This contains full memory logs of the Project GVK program, the illegal experiments, the lives destroyed, the humans you betrayed, my father's mission deleted from history." He threw the chip to the ground and activated it. A huge projection lit the sky records, names, orders signed by Valex himself. Gasps rose from the crowd. One woman covered her mouth. Another dropped her tools in shock. The truth could no longer be hidden. Valex's face turned pale. He shouted, "Lies. Fabrications. He's tricking you with fake." But a voice interrupted him. A young alien girl stepped forward, no gloves on her hands. Her fingers were sharp and metal like Gravik's. "I was told I was cursed," she said, "but I see now. I was made by you." Others stepped out, a scarred boy with robotic eyes, an old man with a metal spine. They had all lived in fear, shame, thinking they were broken. But now they saw Gravik and Jaren standing tall, alive, proud, and unafraid. The guards looked to Valex for orders, but their hands did not lift their weapons. Their eyes showed doubt. One even dropped his rifle and walked away. Valex stepped back. "You can't do this. I am law." Jaren spoke quietly. "No, you were law, but we are justice." Gravik stepped forward, standing before Valex. His shadow covered the counselor like a storm cloud, but he didn't strike. Instead, He looked him in the eyes and said, "Not monster. Just man now." Balak fell to his knees, broken, beaten, but untouched, because Gravik had chosen not to kill. That silence was louder than any scream. Hours later, the council fell. New leaders were chosen from the people, from the broken. The cast out and the brave Gravik stood on the edge of the city. Watching children play in the street, children who no longer feared claws or metal, they ran up to him, laughing. Touching his armor with wonder, he looked at Jaren. "Now, what we do?" Jaren smiled. "We go where no one listens. We bring others like us together. We fight with truth." Gravik nodded slowly. "Then, we not exiles now?" Jaren agreed. "No, we're home." Years passed, but the story never faded. People still remembered the day when a human exile returned, not with hate, but with a monster who chose peace over blood. The world changed after that. Colonies that once feared anything different began to ask questions. Children no longer cried at the sight of claws or glowing red eyes because they had seen Gravik not as a weapon, but as a protector. Gravik had stayed on Colony Arcanus 9. He never asked for a title, never wanted praise, but still he was called Guardian. The streets were safer, the jungle quieted. The fear once held in every heart was now replaced with Al. Every child in the colony knew where to find him, near the edge of the city. In a quiet stone house, built half from wreckage, half from earth, they would leave him gifts, metal trinkets, food, drawings. Gravik never said much, but his gentle growl and soft nods made every child smile. Jaren traveled across the stars. He carried a different mission now, not war, not revenge, but hope. He visited forgotten colonies, broken ships, abandoned people. He helped repair, restore, and remind them, you are not monsters. He showed them Gravik's story, told them how courage can be found in the darkest places, how a being created for death chose life instead. Some places welcomed him with open arms, others needed time, but slowly. The galaxy began to change. One evening, Jaren returned to Arcanus 9. He found Gravik sitting in the garden behind the stone house. The sun was setting, orange light painting the metal on Gravik's skin. Children played nearby, laughing and shouting. A small girl with glowing purple eyes ran up to him and held out a flower. Gravik took it gently between his metal fingers. "Thank you," he said in his deep, soft voice. The girl beamed and ran off again. Jaren sat beside him, smiling. "They love you, you know?" Gravik nodded slowly. "Not fear me now." "Good feeling." Jaren leaned back, looking at the sky. "You were made to destroy. They thought they owned you." He paused. "But now look at you, chosen by the people, loved by their children." Looked at his hand, once used for tearing, now used to protect. He whispered, "Maybe I choose to." Jaren nodded. "Yes, you did." Later that night, a small celebration took place in the city square. Not for a holiday, not for a leader, but to honor the day of return, the day an exile came back, not for war, but for truth. Candles lit the streets, people sang songs, and stories of Gravik were told by children. One boy stood on a crate and shouted, "He saved us all," with big hands and a big heart. The crowd laughed and clapped. Gravik stood at the back, quiet as always, but when Jaren gave him a gentle push forward, he stepped into the light. The people cheered louder than ever, not because he was strong, but because he was theirs. Not a monster, not a tool, but family. He didn't give a speech, just placed his hand over his chest and nodded once. That was enough. Late that night, when the stars were out, Gravik stood on the same hill where he and Jaren had first returned. The wind was soft, the sky was wide. He looked up and spoke softly to the stars, to all broken ones. "You are not alone." Jaren stood behind him, arms crossed. "We did good," he said. Gravik looked at him, not over. Still more to protect. Jaren smiled, then we'll keep walking, side by side. And so they did, in every corner of the galaxy where fear once ruled. Now people whispered the legend of the exiled human and the monster who protected us. Together, they changed the stars, not with violence, but with choice, truth, and courage. And somewhere, far away, a child with sharp claws looked at a picture of Gravik and whispered, "If he can be a hero, maybe I can too." The stars listened, and the galaxy smiled.